standards in effect at the time the system was constructed and not need any upgrading. We live with that too. Like you said, there's not much difference between this ordinance and the ordinance we worked under. My question is this, although we may not be involved in this, the town of Ledyard will be, does that mean the SWA, the Southeast Water Authority, does not have to upgrade its hydrants sooner or later?
The SWA doesn't fall under WPCA.
I'm talking about the town. They don't fall in WPCA, but you're asking the WCA to meet all the requirements. You know what's going on over in Montville. What are you going to do about that? Who's going to take care of that?
But you're asking a question that's not relevant to the ordinance. It's not necessarily a bad question, but it's not relevant to the ordinance or to the purpose for why we're here.
It's how you want to read the ordinance, okay? Tax collector is designated. For 3 years, I lived with that. And the computer system that they have upstairs in the tax department never matched the work downstairs. Now, I wonder, have you corrected that? Is that still going on, or is the present WPCA handling everything?
Well, first of all, the version that you are looking at is not the same version as on the screen. If you read the words on the screen, I don't know if you can read that, sir, but it actually has crossed out tax collector, and it says it's the WPCA.
Oh, I haven't got that version. My version is 3812.
Right, that's what I'm saying, that the version dated 3/26/12, which was just...
Good move. Good move. All right, I'll give you credit for that. Membership. The last area says, any vacancy in the WPCA shall be filled with the expired portion of the term by the town council. Does that mean you'll find somebody, or does that mean a member of the town council will sit in that position? Which is it?
It means we'll find somebody.
You'll find somebody, okay. I want that clarified, okay?
Well, that's consistent with all the other ordinances for all the other commissions, such as the planning commission, zoning commission.
All right. Somebody with some technical or legal experience is going to have to go through whether the water and sewer system budgets have to be separated. Now, I try to understand English, okay? And I say for 3 years they have to be separated. And yet everybody says no, 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 no. And I get that, not from, huh?
The budgets have to be separated.
The state says they have to be separated.
The state hears this, not somebody, not an auditor.
It says the budgets. It doesn't say the accounts. It says the budgets.
So it's a word type deal, right? Okay, I just wanted that, you clarify it, yeah, okay. I hope you're right. I was glad to get a hold of Mr. Solms at the end of the hearing before this, and you proposed a 16% increase in the budget. Okay, that's over with. But I was even pleased that you were going to have the town hearing on your ticket, that you are going to stand in front of those people and tell them we have a 16% raise, not somebody else.
If we recommend it, we have not moved up.
That's all right, yes, but you plan to do it if you move in that direction, not the next WPCA, right?
If we have to do this sooner, we're going to take the responsibility ourselves.
I appreciate that very much. Thank you.
For clarity, the budget that was actually approved in the WPCA hearing was 6% lower in terms of expenditures than the budget approved last year. Not 16% increase in the budget, as was mentioned. Mr. Cherry.
Good evening. Mike Cherry, 5 Whipple Drive, Chairman of the Planning Commission and Economic Development Commission member. A couple of comments. Section 1, where you put the word in on recommend financing, the sentence now needs to be restructured, because as I read it, it says recommend financing, construction, and operation. We really just meant recommend financing. I understand why you did that. I looked later to see, okay, if they just recommend financing, who's the responsible party for financing? And it wasn't crystal clear, so I would recommend that the word recommend be deleted, because later on we talk about how financing is handled. It's really a matter for you all, not for me, but that was an awkward construction. And the part that talks about review and approval of all plans and specifications for community water supplies, more than one service per well within its service area, and or sewage disposal systems, there's some words missing. And the reason I say that is the statute requirement is...
Can you tell us what section you're reading?
I'm still in section 1.
Okay.
I am in the second paragraph from the bottom of section 1. What the requirement is that we captured in the subdivision regulations, which shows up in section 8.5, water and sewage, specifically section 8.5.4, it says that shared or community septic systems are proposed, written notification of the conceptual approval by State Department of Health Service or Department of Environmental Protection is required prior to Planning Commission approval. And it goes on to say community septic systems serving more than one parcel of land or building lot shall be operated by the Ledyard Water Pollution Control Authority. So if the word community was inserted where you talk to septic, your intent is a septic system serving more than one property. It's not clear that that's what the ordinance says.
And you are reading what?
I'm reading from the current subdivision regulations, section 8.5.4, which is captured from current Connecticut general statutes.
Okay, so if this sentence were to read, the WPCA shall also review and approve all plans and specifications for any community water or sewer as per the planning regulations?
That would be fine. If it said community water or sewer, more than one service, more than one lot per service, that would be fine. That's what we're trying to capture, is if more than one person is being served by that system.
Yeah, I understand.
WPCA.
My personal thing is that when we try to have two or more, we got an ordinance over here that says this, we got that over there that says that. Somebody changes one, now they're, if one of them just said, do what the other thing said.
If this one's clear, I will go change the subdivision regs to point to the ordinance, because the ordinance is the higher thing. I can't change that, but I can change the subdivision regs.
Okay, what is required to be in here, I guess is...
All I would do is I would put community before sewage, and you're all set. Add that one word, community water or community sewage, and then it'd be fine. It'll meet the statute, and subdivision regs won't conflict.
So we want to put a community in here. Just, okay.
And then I would applaud you on having an ordinance that's going to relieve you of the responsibility of being the WPCA.
Yes, and I assume you're going to be one of the volunteers to step forward.
I would be happy to step forward, not for a 3-year term, but I'd be happy to serve 1 or 2 years until you can get it off and running. I don't have a problem with that.
I love volunteers.
I'd also
Write that down somewhere, right?
Julian said he would be happy to do the same thing as a former guy. But congratulations on getting an ordinance out.
There is a light.
She said there is a light, and I was going to agree with her.
Are there any other members of the public who wish to speak on the proposed ordinance? Yes.
I don't know who's controlling this. Could you go back to the tax card?
Marcia, you have to state name and address.
Oh, Marcia Hancock, 2 Coaching Pike.
I didn't remember where she lived today.
I'm very rarely there. What do we want? I have not seen the latest version. I know some changes were suggested. I know one of the changes that was suggested was WPCA administrative staff would do assessment collection too.
Well, that's what this currently says, but Ordinance 97 says differently. And Ordinance 97 has much greater detail on how we're going to do benefit assessments. So we have a conflict if we were to pass this in its current form. My recommendation to the administrative chair just prior to this meeting was to delete the words benefit assessment from where it says here. And through this ordinance, we would only be discussing, designating the WPCA staff as the collector of water and sewage connections and user fees pursuant to the Connecticut General Statutes, because how we do benefit assessments is covered in a different ordinance, number 97, which currently says tax collector.
Right,
Now,
it
whether
does.
that should change is perfectly subject to discussion, but that is what it says.
You're right, it does say that. Okay, for future recommendation, I think that would be a good idea, to have the assessments collected in the WPCA office as well. They don't happen that often, and then once they're set up, it's a pretty consistent collection process. So I realize you can't settle that tonight, but for future reference, I think that would be a more efficient system.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other members of the public who wish to speak on this? Okay, seeing none. Mr. Mayor, are you a member of the public?
What?
Are you a member of the public? Yes, Mr. Mayor.
John Rodolico, 4 Barron Court. I'd just like to support what Mrs. Hancock just mentioned. I think it's something the council should consider, but I didn't quite understand what the chairman said.
We have a completely separate ordinance with a very detailed procedure for levying an assessment of water assessment, water benefit assessment payments.
Statute.
And it's ordinance 97.
Right.
And the proper place to make the determination is actually in that one, because that one currently specifies the tax collector and has far more detail about what's supposed to happen. So if we were to change it here, we have a conflict between, we have two ordinances, both effective in conflict.
But it's an ordinance, not a state statute.
Correct. Okay, are there any other members of the public? Okay, seeing none, I move to adjourn this public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the hearing is adjourned. It will take 2 minutes, and then we will start the council meeting at 10 after.
That's Sabrina's mom.
Oh, okay. Okay. You're okay. Now I got it. Now I got it. I shake hands, but a light went off, right? See there?
30-second warning, 15 seconds. Okay, we have some council missing, but nevertheless. Okay.
Bill.
Anybody know where Mr. Cheriski is up to? Hey, Bill. Okay. We call to order this meeting, regular meeting of the Ledyard Town Council.
This is the third time in an hour that you need.
Okay, please join me in the pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I was thinking
Roxanne, please call the roll.
Mrs. Davis? Here. Mr. Dombrowski?
Here.
Mr. Eichelberg? Mr. France?
Here.
Mr. Marshall?
Here.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Here.
Mr. Thomas?
Here.
Mr. Sullivan?
Here.
Mrs. Wadecki?
Here.
8 here, 1 absent.
We have a quorum. Residents and property owners wishing to address the council. Yes, Mr. Lamb. Oh, sorry.
I might come off the speed direct.
Not Mr. Lamb.
Stephanie Calhoun, 118 Gallup Hill Road. I would just like to say first, thank you for your work on the budget. I understand it's a very grueling process, and there's lots of feelings and opinions and all of that come out. Having said that, I really hope that you do your best to protect our town, but also to protect our schools. And I don't think there's a whole lot of extra at the schools. Maybe I'm missing something. But that's, good schools equal good towns. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Lamb.
Robert Lamb, 99 Lambtown Road. I understand that we have a retiring person that's probably got more years in service than most of us in this room. Is there anything going to be recognition for Mr. Martin? And the second question is, I've asked a couple times, do we have a licensed civil engineer on the payroll as a town employee for Town Legend? Thank you.
Okay, so Mayor, you want to address those now, or do you want to address them in your report?
I'm sorry?
Yeah, you want to speak.
I was answering a question.
I understand. Well, I think the mayor...
I'm a licensed civil engineer.
Yeah, before your term started, do we have one?
I don't know what we call it.
Because we've had some people or an individual reviewing plans and specifications that's representing the town probably illegally. And that's a lawsuit possibility. Hopefully that's corrected.
Okay, thank you for that. And he did ask a question about whether or not Mr. Martin, who is going to be retiring, would be somehow recognized.
I know there was something at the town garage before he left, prior to his retirement. I don't know details.
Usually the town doesn't do the retirement part, as somebody else does. It's just whether or not we give a proclamation or something.
Okay. All right, are there any other residents or property owners wishing to address the council? All right, moving on then. Committee, commissions, and board reports. We have no reports tonight. Comments of town councilors? Yes, Councilor McGrath.
The Youth Services is sponsoring I'll call it a presentation on Monday, April 2nd. They have invited a woman whose son had an untimely death from an overdose of drugs, and she's going to speak to the high school, middle school, and at 6:30 in the evening at the high school, she is going to speak to the parents. So I think that this is probably, would be very informative for all parents of children.
Thank you. Other comments, town councilors? Yes, Councilor Solomon.
I had the opportunity to attend the Aylesbury, Ledyard Center, and Juliet Long Elementary School choir performance at Ledyard High School. I'm sure all those kids are going to be up there sooner than we know it, but it was really well done. And I want to compliment Mr. Lambert and Ms. Pollitt and Ms. Barber for the work they did. You could just see the joy those kids had in singing. Some of them were really getting into it. It was a pleasure to see. Good performance.
Thank you. Other comments from town councilors? All right, next item on the agenda is approval of minutes. We have before us the regular meeting minutes of March 14th.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any comments?
They were provided.
Okay, Roxanne, call the roll.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Mrs. Wadecki?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
Mr. France?
Yes.
8 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion passes. Communications, we have a list provided. Any additions, deletions, corrections? Seeing none. Next item, the Subcommittee on Liaison Reports, Administration Committee. Councilor Dombrowski.
Administration Committee is not up since our last meeting.
Thank you. Community Services. Councilor Marshall.
We have not met since our last meeting.
Wow, moving right along. Finance Committee, have you met?
Yeah, several times since our last meeting. The Finance Committee has met, as many are aware, to go through the budget of general government. We had 3 working sessions where the departments came in along with the mayor to discuss their proposed budgets. We have reviewed that. At this time, we are doing some final reviews of the budget, discussions with the superintendent and the mayor and the finance committee working together to assess any further reductions that may be available. The primary look at is because of our mild winter, there may be monies in the current budget year that could be used or brought forward in the future year to reduce the expenditures for next year. We're evaluating that in the budget we presented to the Finance Committee on the 4th of April as currently planned.
So the item that's on the agenda tonight, we would anticipate no action?
That's correct.
I just wanted to add to what Councilor France said. The idea is to buy ahead. So if there is savings in this year's budget, to buy, in particular on the board side, fuel oil or school books or textbooks for next year. So the budget next year would be reduced, but the money would be spent this year, and it would have no impact on the children, class sizes, programs. It's just taking any savings we can find this year, and we know the town has substantial savings, and the Board of Education has indicated they may have some as well. The mild winter saved everybody a lot of money, everybody in this room, but it saved the town and the school board a lot more because we have a lot bigger buildings. So the idea is to buy ahead, not to cut next year's budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments for finance? Okay. Information technology.
We have not met, and for our next meeting, I have prepared the remote meeting participation ordinance. So you will soon be seeing that. Policy. It's not an ordinance. It's a policy.
We don't need more ordinances.
I haven't gotten to titling it yet, obviously.
That's okay.
But I anxiously await that. All right, land use, Councilor Dombrowski.
Land use has met. We have one item that will be on the agenda tonight for moving forward for a public hearing.
Thank you. Board of Education liaison?
Just a couple of items. The board has begun a program called Computers for Students, where they will be distributing their older computers to students that do not have computers. Basically, they'll be loaded with word processing programs, and then the students will be able to save their work to a flash drive, bring it to school, and have it printed at school. So it's a good way to get rid of all of the computers that are sitting around and also to give them to some students that don't have them in their homes.
Will they take donations?
You know, I knew somebody was going to ask that because I had that question myself. I will find out and report back.
Some of us do go through our computers quite often.
Quite often, yes. Let's see, the 2012-2013 school calendar has been approved, and Saturday, June 22nd, will be graduation.
Did we build enough days into our calendar?
I believe so. And let's see, other than that, the board's paying a lot close attention to transportation costs of transporting students to the magnet and charter schools, and they're keeping a watchful eye on that because we are not required to provide transportation. So it is an area where if things get tough in the future, it's an area to look at. And then finally, the board, as you know, well, some of you may not know, when they do a Board of Ed meeting, the first hour and a half or so, hour and 15 minutes, is the regular board meeting, and then they have a workshop as the second part of their meeting. At the last meeting, their workshop, IQM2 was the topic of the board's workshop, and they are literally on board. The board is on board with IQM2, and I think it's going to help with communication, just as we're doing. They're looking forward to jumping on board as well. That's my report.
Any questions for our Board of Ed liaison? Are there other liaison reports? Yes, Councilor.
WPCA, we just met, we have 3 items on tonight's budget. We've recommended the water budget, we've recommended the sewer budget, and we've recommended that the town council adopt the bid waivers so we can get started on the Elgin Heights water project. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Councilor Davis.
Parks and Recreation. Well, remember last 2 weeks ago when I announced Mary Marie Holman party for her 50th anniversary? Well, that was supposed to be a surprise.
It was a surprise when you announced it.
It wasn't a surprise, was it?
Well, fortunately, obviously not a lot of people watch, and they certainly didn't read it in the paper because it also made it into the paper. So I do apologize for that, but it really was a nice event, and she really was surprised. So it was a great event.
For those of you who missed it, we honored her last Thursday.
Yes.
For serving the town for 50 years. That's half a century on the Parks and Recs Committee. No. So, are there other liaison reports? Okay, seeing none, next item on the agenda, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. We have begun road work on Highland Drive. It's begun the drainage work that's being done by a contractor. And we will have signs up tomorrow for those that may not know it. The work is went by there today, and the drainage work is pretty localized. So we'll try to do that. That's a road that needed a lot of attention, so it's good to see that we're starting with that. As you've all been reporting, and you're all aware of how more and more commissions and staff departments are coming on board with IQM2 and Minitrack and tracking systems and the document data storage that we have. I'd like to begin some discussions with the council. I know council staff has been primarily responsible for incorporating that into the system, and they've done an excellent job doing that. As we start to do that, and I know that the commissions that I'm involved in and I sit in with, I emphasize to them the need for them to get their secretaries or their staff people to pick up more of the work of doing agendas, minutes, storing documents before meetings, to try to move some of the load off the council staff and onto other staff or other commissioners. So I want to work with that, and Roxanne and I had a conversation today. Some of them are getting up to speed, and we're trying to encourage more of them to do that. So again, hopefully that frees her up to do some other things, and it also frees up our other staff as they become more efficient on that work. We've begun interviews for zoning and wetlands enforcement officials. We should finish all the interviews this week. We had a number of applicants and qualified applicants, and So we're going through that. The highway superintendent, we have closed on that listing, that posting, and had a number of applications, and we will be beginning interviews on that one shortly, and then we will shortly be closing the assistant finance director as well. The Councilman McGrattan asked a question last meeting about the $10,000 grant for the police that was in fact associated with Safe Teens through Ledyard. It's that program that I was mentioning. And again, it's to encourage police and youth interface. And so it's a program I do sit in on their quarterly meetings.
They're just applying for that. I don't think we have it.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I did speak with Ledyard, and it wasn't clear whether they had it or not.
No.
You could be right. Yeah. Probably are. Sexual harassment training, we had that last week, or the week before, I can't remember. And I'd say that 50 to 60 of our staff probably attended. We've picked up most of our department head supervisors, and we have many of our staff there. So that was excellent training, and we will be continuing that. We have another one scheduled, and we'll notify you if any of you would like to attend. One of the things that I overlooked was we should probably have some of our commission chairs or commissioners, open to them also. Anyone who represents the town and interfaces with the public or staff should probably be attending that type of training. The CVS closing is coming up. It could be as soon as next week. There are some details we're still working out. They are quite motivated, and there are some issues that we need to work with them on, and we're doing that. The question that was raised, I didn't mean to make light of Mr. Lamb's question concerning, do we have a professional engineer on staff? But my illustration, myself being one, I have that certification hanging on my wall. Doesn't necessarily mean I'm qualified to do certain things. I worked for an ex-admiral once who was very fond of saying, give me an engineer and I'll make him what I want him to be. And in fact, you will find that there are other positions in the town that are staffed by individuals that may not necessarily have the specific certification or training that we're looking for. In fact, many of our job descriptions will rightly say, specific certification or equivalent or relevant information. I want to assure Mr. Lamb and all of our other citizens that all approvals that we give in our town are reviewed by the appropriate qualified staff, or if necessary, and we do it in every area, if we need to contract help, we will get it. But I know of, you can look at our commissions. We have many commissions that do approvals totally on their own. Zoning Commission, Planning Commission, Wetlands Commission do many of their approvals without necessarily having technical training. So we take that very seriously, and we do have qualified staff throughout our land use areas, and where we need additional support, we will certainly get that. You may have seen a little notice on the front of the paper that Gemma Moran, Food Distribution Organization in London, got 96,000 eggs donated. It's 12,000 dozens. 12,000 dozens. And they had other things, produce, tomatoes, things. So, we sent a car over there. We picked up 60 dozen eggs, and they were gone by the end of the day, along with tomatoes, and it was quite a bit. So, and the interesting thing is that Ledyard was not certified to participate in that. Now, Gemma Moran, as you know, is an incredible organization, and not only do they give normal foodstuffs, but they produce meat and things like that. So it is something, and we have now become certified through our connection with United Way, and we now can participate in that. And it's just another way to distribute, to people throughout the communities that make our need. That's my report.
Questions for the mayor? I will lead off. Mr. Mayor, we We heard from Public Works Director during his budget presentation to the Finance Committee about snow savings on the order of $115,000 projected. Do we have a plan for what will happen with that savings money?
Yes, as a matter of fact, we're putting something together. It's unfortunate I was tied to the meetings today. We did not get that today. We have, in fact, we had that information available on Public Works. You know, they keep those figures. They show them to you. Yes, we have, but you have to keep in mind the fact that within, let's just say Public Works, let's not look at other departments. There are other line items and areas that may be overdrawn, and we're looking at those areas to save. But what we plan to do is look at that savings, look at the needs we may have to cover, and do exactly as you said, which was what, and you know, we're looking at some, what I suggested is, what tangible item were we planning to buy next year? You know, a big ticket item that we could, you know, even if it's capital item, say buy and pre-buy, which is a good idea anyway. We try to get a better price now than we may get after July 1st. So we are looking for that. We should have that information to you tomorrow for your use, but we are going to make some recommendations in there as to how, as to other needs we may have. In addition to that, you should be seeing, I don't know if it's on the agenda now, about, we did get the first of the checks from the FEMA.
Next finance meeting.
Next finance meeting of the FEMA. We got a sizable check. We made some recommendations on how to do that. We still have some checks coming in for other emergency services. So that will help also with some of those accounts.
Okay, and I just wanted to state that, I think through your answer, you anticipated perhaps the motive of my question being, you know, how are we going to apply those savings towards property tax? But I want to make clear that one thing I think we just owe to the public, you know, we have, you know, good, bad, and average years, and surely during the bad years, you know, we hear time and again about all the financial issues caused by bad winter, and how are we going to cover this and that, and when we have an extraordinarily good year, we owe the public, okay, we didn't spend all that money. What are we doing with it? Yes.
Traditionally, in the past, we have never had this much of it left over. But we do try to carry some of it forward to next year because we budget for a normal year. And as we know, last year was a horrendous year. And so I would recommend that at least some of it get put forward to make sure we have enough money in next year's budget for the snow. Typically, that's what we've done, but we've never had this much money left over. This was a really...
I agree, we have done that. I was under the understanding that the council had moved away from that, and I personally don't like the idea of carryovers. I will say this, and I understand what you're saying. I will say this. I agree with what you're saying. We've had good years and bad years, and you and I have seen both. The town has always turned back money, though, regardless.
That is true.
So we always, you know, have somewhat of a cushion. But I agree, that may be something that you may want to consider doing.
The auditors don't want to call it carried forwards anymore. What they want us to do is budget it in income and budget it in expense.
We're looking for something creative to do. For instance, is there a tank of oil that we can fill? Can't do that because we
prepay already.
Prepay. Could we we used to pre-buy sand. Well, you know,
buy salt.
You know, yeah, we don't. It isn't a good thing. It isn't a good thing to keep up the summer. So
I don't know. Last year, the year before, people had some.
You know, so those are some things that we would have.
Thank you. Are there other questions for the mayor?
I was just hoping for an update, Mayor, on any new developments or plans or dates for discussions on independent police department or location of the police department, anything there, as well as regional dispatch.
No. Okay, you just threw in the last one. Police and police in the police building, no. And my thought being that I was assuming there would be some discussion with the council as part of the budget process. You know, I made a proposal, which, you know, the budget really is a proposal and kind of a roadmap for the following year. I was hoping to get some feedback because certainly the council and their appropriation will determine the funding that we need. But I've had no further discussion on that. As far as dispatch goes, there is some activity coming out of the Safety Commission. There's some discussions that are going on there. I did have just a side discussion with a couple of the selectmen at the COG meeting, and you did see the letter that I wrote to Preston, and that's something we will be looking at.
Anything more on police?
No, I have not had any further discussions.
Other questions for the mayor? Councilor Davis?
You brought up the eggs, which made me think about something I read online, that how nice it was that the Gallup Hill School collected a whole bunch of food for their food pantry. I didn't realize they had a food pantry, which led me to a question. Is there some coordinated effort between town's food pantry, the Gemma Moran? I mean, is there like the coordination of all this great activity?
Not yet, but I expect there will be. I brought it up in our social services board, and I brought it up at LISA, which is an inter-church activity. I'll be forthright with you. My take is that there are some isolated schools that have it. There are some churches that have it. The impression that I'm getting is, over the last several years, as things have gotten difficult for churches as well as as other organizations, that it has somehow been deferred to the town. Town has staff. Town has a bigger food closet probably than anyone, and there are still some areas that have their own. But what I'm trying to do is see, if the board agrees with me that we need to make the right decisions about what the town's role is in social services. That being said, there seems to be unanimity that there needs to be coordination and accountability in terms of how we help people. And we've talked about that. We haven't developed any way to do that. It raises some interesting questions of confidentiality when you're now dealing outside a municipality. How do you share information between churches? But there seems to certainly be the idea that that is something that should be considered.
Other questions for the mayor?
I just had one other thing to say. Thank you, Roxanne. WPCA office, you may want to stop in there. They've done an excellent job in fixing the former judges' chambers, and it looks very nice, and that will shortly become the new operating office for the WPCA.
One last question. Has the town of Stonington made a final decision on Ledyard?
No. The town of Stonington selectmen are meeting as we speak. I've had some contact with them. That one could go either way.
Yeah.
They, unlike us, who have to count to 5, they have to count to 2 to get something. I know where 2 of them stand. I don't know where the third one stands. So
They were meeting 2 weeks ago, though.
that was a public hearing,
Yeah.
and they could have made a decision, but they didn't. I think they're waiting until the absolute last minute.
Thank you. Anything else for the mayor? All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have no items of old business. Before we move to new business, does anybody desire to amend the agenda? Seeing none, we have the 3 items on the consent calendar.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, no issues or discussions. Roxanne, call the roll.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Mrs. Wadecki?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
Mr. France?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
8 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion passes. For those who are listening but don't have a document in front of them, there was a motion to appropriate a small amount of money for a bid bond of $1,300 and two refunds of over collections of tax below the threshold that required an independent vote. 4th item on the agenda, Administration Committee.
Make a motion to adopt the proposed ordinance creating a water pollution control authority for the town of Ledyard contained in the revised draft dated March 26, 2012.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second in front of us. Is there any discussion?
There were several comments made at the
Several
public
comments,
hearing.
which I'd like to enter now. One was in section 1. We add the word community in front of the word sewage, which is in the 3rd paragraph of section 1. In section 4, first paragraph, delete the word benefit assessment.
Mr. Chair, you had another recommendation back in
Mr.
section
Chairman,
1.
had in section 5, replace the words tax collector with administrative, WPCA administrative staff office for the holding of the water rates.
Mr. Cherry mentioned later that tax collector shows up. when
Yeah,
you're-
no, that's section 5. That's the one.
That's the one.
Yep.
Okay, and he also mentioned that he recommended removing the word recommend up in the 2nd paragraph of section 1.
Yep, I missed that one. Thank you.
All right, so to summarize, I think there will be 4 changes. That's section 1, under authority, 2nd paragraph, the word recommend in front of the word financing in the first line. You delete the word recommend. In the same section 1, authority, 4th paragraph, in the 2nd line of the 4th paragraph, the word sewage disposal system is actually a phrase, and in front of that would go the word community.
Yep.
Down in section 4, first paragraph, you're deleting the words benefit assessment, as well as the comma that comes after the word assessments.
Yep.
And in section 5, first paragraph, 3rd line from the end of the paragraph, where it says tax collector, that would be changed to WPCA staff, administrative staff. Is that
Administrative staff.
WPCA administrative staff? Okay, any other comments, questions, discussion? Yes, Councilor Solomons.
I think if we take out the word recommend, as just discussed in the first section, then we counter the original request, or the former request to put it in there. So I was thinking maybe we would keep recommend financing and just move that as after construction and operation. And I think that's a valid point about recommend. We don't, the WPCA doesn't direct financing, it recommends.
Recommends
So just
finance
move that,
for
those
capital
two words
improvements.
last.
Yep.
So development, construction, and operations, and recommend financing.
So let me see if I can read the words and see if they make sense. The WPCA shall have the authority to plan and direct the development, construction, and operation of such community water and sewage supply, disposal, and distribution facilities, and to recommend financing for same, as may be required to properly serve the water and sewer needs of the town. What do I do?
Perfect. I see that.
Any other discussion? It's a question. In this process, did anybody consider whether 5 regular members is still the right number?
That's what's called up by the state statute.
Is it? That's for sewage.
Yes.
Okay. Because we also asked those folks to do water, we need 5. Okay. Well, I guess you answered the question. You considered. Any other comments? Okay. Roxanne? Well, let's see, we have a motion to adopt
The amended.
the amended, but it's March 26th, the ordinance dated March 26th, as amended
March 28th.
March 28th.
So March 28th.
That's a friendly amendment, correct?
It is a friendly
It is a
amendment.
friendly amendment, yes.
We only have to vote once.
Roxanne, call the roll.
Okay, Mr. Soms?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Mrs. Wadecki?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
Mr. France?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
8 in favor, 0 opposed.
We have a standing ovation from the council now. Okay, item 5, I understand there's no action, correct, finance? All right. Item 5 was to adopt the proposed budget for next year, but that budget is not ready. So that will move to old business for a future meeting. Item 6, finance.
to make a motion to adopt a proposed fiscal year 2012-2013 water operations budget amount of $898,456 and a leased water budget of $504,906. No? No.
We don't approve it.
Okay.
Just water operations.
I understand. Correct.
Is that all or no?
For the water budget is $898,456.
Second.
Okay, so for clarity, we've had a motion second, but for clarity, can we just repeat the motion so to make sure that we're all understood where it really ended?
Make a motion to adopt proposed fiscal year 2012-2013 water operations budget of $898,456.
Okay, and that was moved by Councilor France and seconded by Councilor Wadecki. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Do you want to say anything about the budget? Any highlights? Is it more or less than what we spent last year?
It's approximately 6%.
I want people to know what we're doing.
But the budget amount is approximately 6% less than the budgeted amount for the current year.
Thank you. No, I'm just having silence so that Councilor Wadecki stews a little bit. Okay, are there any other comments or discussion? She doesn't have Councilor Diaz to...
Let's vote.
It's time.
Yeah, that's true.
Roxanne, please call the roll.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Mrs. Wadecki?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
Mr. France?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Song?
Yes.
8 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion passes. Item 7, Finance.
A motion to set a public hearing date for April 19th, 2012 at 7 p.m. to be held in the Ledyard High School auditorium to receive comments and recommendations regarding the proposed fiscal year 2012-2013 budget.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion second. Any comment?
Yes, the original schedule that was published had 2 public hearings, one on Monday the 16th and one on Thursday the 19th. Based on the budget and the discussion that has been going on in the town, we feel that there is no need for a second hearing, so we would single up on a single hearing on the 19th.
Any other comment, question? Okay, Roxanne, call the roll.
Mrs. Wadecki?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
Mr. France?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Song?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
8 in favor, 0 opposed.
It's on Thursday, the 19th.
Motion passes. Yes.
Correct. There is a
Mary wants to put it in her calendar.
Item 8, Finance.
Make a motion to hold the annual town meeting regarding the proposed fiscal year 2012-2013 budget on May 21st, 2012 at 7 p.m. at the Ledyard High School auditorium and to adjourn to a referendum to be held on May 22nd, 2012 between the hours of 6 a.m. and 8 p.m.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Should the referendum fail, referendum will be held between the hours of 12 noon and 8 p.m. in accordance with Chapter 8, Section 5 of the town charter.
We did not do that because that's not what it says here.
It's supposed to say that.
Okay.
Okay. So, Roxanne, would you repeat, please, what it was that Councilor France really said when you made the motion?
It should read, motion to hold the annual town meeting regarding the proposed fiscal year 2012-2013 budget on May 21st, 2012, at 7 p.m. at the Ledyard High School auditorium, and to adjourn to a referendum to be held on May 22nd, 2012, between the hours of 6 a.m. and 8 p.m. In addition, should the referendum fail, the subsequent referendum will be held between the hours of 12 p.m. and 8 p.m. in accordance with Chapter 8, Section 5 of the town charter. And what that does is it says it's going to be 2 weeks later and then 2 weeks later.
I understand that. Thank you.
It's spelled out in the charter.
So that is the motion that you made?
Yeah, and I seconded that motion too.
Okay, is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none. Roxanne, call the roll.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
Mr. France?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Song?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Mrs. Wadecki?
Yes.
8 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion passes. Item 9, Finance.
Motion to recommend the town council appropriate $17,081 from Fund 24 fund balance into account 24-1520-17-900 equipment for the purchase of 2 new stretchers. In addition, recommend the town council approve bid waiver to Common Sense EMS Supplies for the purchase of the stretchers.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. Any discussion?
These are replacing the stretchers they have that are not operating correctly. These stretchers lift up the stretcher to put it in the ambulance, so they don't have to pick them up. They also will be able to handle up to 700 pounds. So they're the new ones that are out that are recommended that everybody have because unfortunately they need them that heavy, and it prevents them from getting hurt picking them up. They raise up themselves to go in the ambulance.
Okay. We tend not to do bid waivers except when we really have to, so is there any other information as to why a bid waiver is either necessary or recommended here?
It was recommended because this is the company that bought the ones from before, but I believe that they only manufacture in this area.
The Administrative Emergency Services went out and looked on the price online at the same time, about 50% more than what they were being bid.
Okay, so
We believe
it's
we're
a good
saving
deal.
money, yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Of course, they're giving us 6,000 trade allowance.
That's right. There was a trade-in allowance on the ones we have, yes.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? Okay, Roxanne, call the roll.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
Mr. France?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan? Yes. Mr. Soms?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Mrs. Wadecki?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
8 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion passes. Item 10, finance.
Motion to grant a bid waiver to Groton Utilities to provide engineering and construction management services for the Algin Heights Water Project in the quarter amount of $265,000.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and 2 seconds.
You can count those.
Thanks, Chairman.
Questions and discussion. The first one, again, same question essentially. Please explain why we would need a bid waiver. This one is for a considerable amount of money.
So the Algin Heights Water Project has been designed, the engineering services have been completed for that. This is a bid to oversee construction of the project itself. The first reason for the bid waiver is we need to get this project out there. We've got to get it out to bid for contractors to get started. They like to get started early in the spring, and the spring already got a jump on us. So that's the primary reason. But the Permanent Municipal Building Committee has also done their due diligence on this, on the advice of professional staff, both the town engineer as well as the director of planning have both weighed in on the bid price that we've got from Groton Utilities to do this work. It's lower than any price in their professional experience they've seen for similar work. A large part of the reason for the low bid, I should back up. They have done a request for information, request for qualifications. So they have reviewed firms. They only asked Groton Utilities for bid because of their proximity, their familiarity with our system, because they run it, and they have subcontracted the engineering firm that has done all of our other work. And again, the 2 professionals on staff have reviewed the bid from Groton Utilities, and they say it's far lower than we could expect from other companies.
And the money is coming from the project funding, correct?
The project funding that's already been approved by the taxpayers.
Okay. Any other questions, comments, discussion? All right, Roxanne, call the roll.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
Mr. France?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Mrs. Wadecki?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
8 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion passes. Item 11, land use.
Make a motion to set a public hearing date on April 11th, 2012, to be held 6:30 p.m. in the council chambers, Annex Building 741, Colonel Ledyard Highway, to receive comments and recommendations concerning the lease between the town of Ledyard and Mr. Walter Major for the purpose of farming a portion of the Clark Farm property located at 1025 Colonel Ledyard Highway and 1087 Colonel Ledyard Highway, Route 17, former state property, at 7 Hobart Road, Gales Ferry, in accordance with Connecticut General Statute 7-163E.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Again, the motion is to set a public hearing Can you just give us a 30-second background on what will happen at the public hearing?
We've had the mayor's office draft the lease agreement. Land use has reviewed it with the lesser, the proposed lesser, to farm and maintain the property, the old Clark Farm and the state property that we have for use as farming, but also for maintaining, mowing the fields and that kind of thing to keep the property up.
Okay, and the proposed lease is available, it's available on the
It is available on the
website. It should also be available in the clerk's office if anybody wants to see it.
Correct.
Do we need to have now?
Question was raised whether we need
public
it.
hearings that night. That's the reason why.
What's the other one? We must have approved
It's
it.
for the compensation ordinance
the
that
board.
we're revising.
Yes.
I'm just a little lost on how 7 and Hurlbut Road.
That's not supposed to be.
Okay.
Oh, okay. It's nowhere near the Clark.
I know.
It's just the two properties.
Okay, so there's a friendly amendment to change the motion, which is again just setting the public hearing, to delete
At 7
at 7 Hurlbut Road.
Yes, sir.
Could I also comment?
Yes.
Really quickly, Sharon?
Yep.
This has been a long process, but the original intent was to maintain town-owned property, and we had to terminate the existing lease with this tenant to renegotiate a new lease, and it's been going on for months. And I just wanted to comment that the existing tenant has been extremely good to work with. He's agreed to maintain the town property for us, and this lease is worth, if I recall, about $4,500 a year to the town for land that is sitting otherwise unused. So it's good.
And we should also add that there was a bid process.
Yes, there was. Thank you.
Okay. Roxanne, call the roll.
Mr. Krantz?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Mrs. Wadecki?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
8 in favor, 0 opposed.
Okay, the motion passes. Item 12 is a general item. So I will move to approve the proposed Finance Assistant Director job description as contained in the revised draft dated March 22nd, 2012.
Second.
Okay, and what we have done is, we just recently approved this. I forget the date of when we actually approved it. Roxanne, do you know?
Yeah.
March 14th.
Yeah, it was just at our last meeting, so it tells you how good my memory gets. But we are simply deleting, at the time, we had in here that the Finance Department Assistant Director of Finance would actually supervise the MIS department, and that's not actually what we want to do per our management structure. So we are just deleting the supervision of the MIS department from the job description. Are there any other comments, questions, discussions? Not Roxanne, call the roll.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Mrs. Wadecki?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
Mr. Krantz?
Yes.
8 in favor, 0 opposed.
Okay, item 13, I'm sorry, the motion passes. Item 13 and last on our agenda tonight, I move to enter into executive session to discuss labor contract negotiations. Present will be the town council, the mayor, and human resources. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? You, Marshall. Okay.
She's here.
We have a motion. We have a motion and a second.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Mrs. Wadecki?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Dombrowski?
Yes.
Sorry. Mr.
Yes.
8 in favor, 0 opposed.
Okay, the motion passes. At this point, we will take a recess to clear the room and start consuming papers.
Sharon asked if I was planning on it. I said no.
One more time.
I don't want to do any work physical. You should be part of it. I'm working.
Students with papers, come on up.
We don't want you to get left out.
I'm fine. I'm good.
You could have got twice because you were at the WPCA meeting too.
No, I didn't fall asleep, believe me.